The crack of his palm against her face echoed across the parade ground like a gunshot. 1,000 Marines stood frozen. Cameras recorded. History shattered. Rear Admiral Marcus Thornton's hand rose again, fist clenched, ready to strike a second time. Lieutenant Kira Vance moved faster than thought. One controlled strike. The Admiral crumpled to the Virginia dirt unconscious, his dress whites stained with clay. She stood over him, spine straight as a rifle barrel. I will accept the consequences. Joint Naval Base. Little Creek, Virginia. Present day. The moment that would destroy careers, expose corruption, and prove that some women don't just fight back, they win. Subscribe now and follow this story to the end. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. No one breathed. 1,000 pairs of boots stood locked in formation. 1,000 witnesses to the impossible. At the center of it all, Rear Admiral Marcus Thornton lay motionless on ceremonial ground, his hat rolling slowly toward the color guard like a fallen crown. Lieutenant Kira Vance's right knuckles throbbed. Her left cheek burned where his palm had cracked across her face 30 seconds earlier, but her voice, when it came, carried across that stunned silence with absolute clarity. I will accept the consequences. The words hung in the air like smoke after a firefight. No one moved. No one spoke. Every witness understood they had just watched something that would be whispered about in barracks and wardrooms for decades. But this moment, this precise collision of honor and violence had been building for 10 years. It started 6,000 miles away, in a country that would teach a 14-year-old girl what sacrifice truly meant. San Diego, California. 10 years earlier. The television glowed blue in the darkened living room. Kira sat cross-legged on the carpet, chemistry homework forgotten. Watching CNN coverage of a hostage rescue operation in Yemen. The reporter's voice was grave. Casualties confirmed. Operation compromised. Details emerging. Her mother stood in the kitchen doorway, dish towel twisted in her hands, face pale as bone. The doorbell rang at exactly 1900 hours. Kira would remember that precision forever. The military didn't do coincidence. Doorbells at 7 p.m. meant one thing. 2 Navy officers stood on the porch in dress whites. The older one, a commander with silver at his temples, held a folded flag against his chest. The younger gripped a manila envelope like it might dissolve in his hands. Neither man looked at Kira. They focused on her mother with the terrible compassion of messengers who had delivered this news before, who would deliver it again. Mrs. Vance, the Chief of Naval Operations, has entrusted me to express his deep regret. The words blurred together. Official phrases. Honorable service. Combat operations. Hostile action. The flag passed from the commander's hands to her mother's. 13 folds. 50 stars. The physical weight of a life compressed into cotton and symbolism. Her mother collapsed into a chair. A sound escaped her throat. Not quite a scream, not quite a sob, something between that Kira had never heard before and would never forget. The younger officer reached out, steadied her. The commander knelt eye level with Kira. His voice dropped to something almost gentle. Your father was the finest SEAL I ever served with. He went into that building alone when his team was pinned down. Cleared 7 rooms, saved 4 hostages. He never stopped fighting, even when... The commander's jaw worked. Even when he knew he wasn't coming out. Kira nodded, though she didn't understand. Not really. Not yet. He asked his teammate to tell you something, if anything ever happened. The commander's eyes glistened. He said, "Tell Kira stay calm, think clear strike true. Said you'd understand." She did understand. 3 phrases. The fundamentals her father had taught her during their weekend training sessions when she was 12 and wanted to learn everything he knew. Combat wasn't about rage. It was about control, patience, precision, discipline. Stay calm. Think clear. Strike true. The commander stood, rendered a salute so sharp it could have drawn blood, and walked back into the California night. The door closed. The house filled with the sound of her mother's weeping. Kira walked upstairs to her room, closed the door, sat on the edge of her bed. The memorial service would come later. The burial at Arlington with full honors. The 21-gun salute that would echo off headstones like the world ending in intervals. But in that moment alone in the darkness, 14-year-old Kira Vance made a promise to a ghost 6,000 miles away. She would become what he was. She would never let anyone break her. Naval Amphibious Base, Coronado, California. 6 years later. Bud E.S. Class 342 started with 180 candidates. By Hell Week, they were down to 47. By the end of Hell Week, 23 remained. Kira was the only woman. Day 4. 0300 hours. The instructors had kept them awake for 96 hours straight. Cold water immersion. Log PT. Surf torture. The candidates who remained moved like zombies, their bodies operating on something deeper than physical energy. Instructor Chief Morrison stood over the formation. His voice cut through the pre-dawn darkness like a blade. "Listen up. Half of you won't make it to sunrise. Your bodies are broken. Your minds are screaming to quit. The bell is right there." He pointed to the brass bell that hung near the compound entrance. 3 rings and it's over. Hot coffee, warm bed, no more pain. All you have to do is quit. Kira's legs trembled. Her arms felt like dead weight. Salt water had rubbed her skin raw in places she didn't know could bleed. Every fiber of her being screamed to stop, to rest, to surrender. A candidate beside her. Williams, a former college linebacker, suddenly broke formation. He walked to the bell. His hand gripped the rope. Ring, ring, ring. He walked away without looking back. 3 more followed within the hour. Chief Morrison stopped in front of Kira, his face inches from hers. "Vance, you know what I see when I look at you. No instructor. I see your father, Master Chief Daniel Vance. I served with him in Afghanistan. Watched him make a shot at 1,800 yards that saved my entire squad. Watched him go into that building in Yemen knowing he wasn't coming out." Morrison's voice dropped. "He was the best I ever saw, and he died proving it." Kira said nothing. Her jaw clenched. "So here's my question, Vance. Are you here because you want to be a SEAL? Or are you here because you're trying to die like your daddy did?" The words hit like a physical blow. "I'm here because I belong here, instructor." "Prove it. How?" Morrison smiled, cold, predatory. "Survive the next 48 hours. Then we'll talk." She survived. 23 candidates finished Hell Week. When it was over, Chief Morrison found her standing alone near the beach, watching the sunrise over the Pacific. "You know what your father told me once," Morrison said quietly. Kira turned. Her body was destroyed, but her eyes were clear, alert, unbroken. He said the hardest thing about being a SEAL isn't the fighting. It's knowing when to fight, when to hold back, when to strike. He said most people never learn the difference. Morrison extended his hand. You learned it this week. Your father would be proud. The handshake was brief, professional, but it meant everything. Kira earned her trident at 22 years old. The youngest female Navy SEAL in history, her specialty close quarters combat and hostage rescue. Her father's legacy continued through blood. Forward Operating Base Lightning, Afghanistan. 18 months before the ceremony. Kira's team had been running night patrols for 3 weeks. Standard counterterrorism operations. Nothing unusual. Until the night she saw something she wasn't supposed to see. 2,300 hours. She was returning from a reconnaissance briefing when movement near the command tent caught her attention. Voices. Low. Urgent. Speaking in the careful tones of men who didn't want to be overheard. She pressed herself against a concrete barrier and watched. Rear Admiral Marcus Thornton stood with 2 men in civilian clothes. Contractors. The patches on their jackets read Aegis Defense Corporation. One of them handed Thornton an envelope. Thick, heavy. The Admiral didn't count what was inside. He simply nodded and slipped it into his jacket. The next shipment arrives Tuesday, one of the contractors said. Same arrangement as before. Make sure the paperwork is clean, Thornton replied. I don't want questions. The equipment passed all inspections. Good, because if this blows back on me, I'll bury everyone involved, starting with you. The contractors left. Thornton stood alone for a moment, his face unreadable in the dim light. Then he turned and walked back toward the command center. Kira didn't move for a long time. She knew what she had seen. Bribery, corruption, a flag officer accepting money from defense contractors in a combat zone. She also knew what would happen if she reported it. But her father's voice echoed in her mind. The conversation they'd had when she was 16, when she'd asked him about integrity. Kira, there's going to come a time when you see something wrong. Something that powerful people don't want exposed. And you're going to have a choice. Stay quiet and survive. Or speak up and accept the consequences. What would you do, Dad? I'd speak up. Every time. Because silence is how corruption wins. And I didn't raise you to help corruption win. The next morning, Kira filed a formal report through proper channels. Every detail. Every word she'd overheard. Every regulation she believed had been violated. 3 weeks later, her team leadership was stripped. Her combat deployments blocked. Transfer orders arrived with suspicious speed. She was reassigned stateside to ceremonial duty, a slow professional death for a warrior. Joint Naval Base, Little Creek, Virginia. 3 days before the ceremony, Kira sat in her small office cleaning her sidearm with the unconscious precision of 10,000 repetitions. The weapon was already spotless, but the ritual brought clarity. A knock at the door. Enter. Sergeant Major Ray Ghost Kellerman stepped inside. 64 years old. Retirement looming like a storm front. But you didn't survive 30 years of special operations without developing instincts that bordered on supernatural. Those instincts were screaming now. You know why Thornton requested you for the ceremony, Kellerman said. Not a question. Kira set down the pistol. Because I saw him taking money. Because I filed a report. Because he's been trying to destroy me ever since. Kellerman sat down across from her. His face was weathered, carved by decades of sun and sand, and the weight of decisions that haunted men in their sleep. I served with your father in Iraq, Fallujah 2006. Things went sideways. We were pinned down, ammunition running low. Daniel took position on a rooftop, started picking off hostiles from ranges that shouldn't have been possible. One shot, one kill. Bought us time to extract. Kellerman's voice roughened. He saved my life that day, and 7 others. I know the story. Then you know what he would say about walking into Thornton's trap. Kira met his eyes. He would say, "Don't run." Wrong. He would say, "Know the ground. Understand the enemy. Don't give them the fight they want." Kellerman leaned forward. Thornton didn't request you because he needs ceremonial support. He requested you because he wants to destroy you publicly. This Medal of Honor ceremony is high profile. Press coverage, senior leadership. He's going to do something that ends your career in front of witnesses. Then let him try. Kira, Sergeant Major. Her voice was quiet, but absolute. My father didn't run from a building full of hostiles when he could have. I won't run from a parade ground in Virginia. Kellerman studied her for a long moment. Something like pride flickered across his face. Yeah, that's what I figured you'd say. Just like Daniel. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a card. This is the private number for a JAG officer, Commander Elena Santos. Good woman. If things go sideways, you call her immediately. Don't wait. Don't try to handle it yourself. Kira took the card, tucked it carefully into her pocket. Thank you, Sergeant Major. Don't thank me yet. Just promise me one thing. Sir, whatever happens out there, remember who you are. You're Master Chief Daniel Vance's daughter. You're a Navy SEAL with a combat record that would make most men weep. You've earned every inch of ground you stand on. His voice dropped. Don't let some broken-down admiral with an axe to grind take that from you. I won't. Good. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. One more thing. That hostage rescue in Syria. The one where you went in alone and cleared 7 rooms with a pistol and a knife. Kira's pulse kicked up. I still have friends in high places. That operation is the most impressive piece of close-quarters work I've seen in 40 years. Kellerman smiled cold and sharp. Thornton knows about it too. Read your classified file. That's what really scares him. Not that you're a woman. That you're better than any SEAL under his command has ever been. The door closed. Kira sat alone, processing. The Syria operation. She'd tried to forget it, but her body remembered. The building. The hostiles. The moment when time compressed and instinct took over. 7 rooms. 12 hostiles. 4 minutes. 4 hostages alive because she'd done what no one else could. If Thornton wanted to destroy her for being competent, let him try. The night before the ceremony. Kira couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. What would Thornton do? How would he attack? What was the move that would end her career without giving her grounds to fight back? At 0200 hours, she gave up on rest. Pulled out her father's dog tags from the small wooden box she kept in her footlocker. The metal still bore scratches from years of combat life compressed into stamped steel. Master Chief Daniel Vance, USN. Blood type O positive. Protestant. She held the tags, let them dangle from her fingers. I don't know if I'm doing this right, Dad, she whispered to the empty room. I don't know if standing up is brave or stupid. I don't know if I'm honoring you or just getting myself destroyed. The dog tags offered no answers. But I know what you would do. You would walk in there with your head high. You would face whatever came. You would stay calm. Think clear, strike true. She closed her fist around the tags. So that's what I'm going to do. She tucked the tags against her chest under her shirt, where they would rest against her heart. Tomorrow, the silence would end. Joint Naval Base, Little Creek. The morning of. The parade ground stretched vast and immaculate in the morning light. Bleachers rose in tiers along one side, already filling with families, veterans, distinguished guests. A stage stood at the far end, draped in red, white, and blue bunting. Cameras everywhere. This was going to be broadcast. Kira arrived at 0500 hours, 3 hours before ceremony start time. She walked the perimeter, checking sightlines, exits, potential problems. Old habits from tactical planning. Know the ground, understand the terrain, identify where threats might emerge. Lieutenant Junior Grade Tommy Chen found hers near the color guard staging area. 25 years old, Naval Academy graduate. Good instincts, still developing judgment. Ma'am, platoon is assembled. Uniforms inspected. Rifles checked. We're ready. Good. Chen hesitated. Ma'am, there's something you should know. The guys are talking. Rumors about why Admiral Thornton specifically requested you, about your time in Afghanistan, about... He paused. About him having it out for you. Kira adjusted her dress uniform. Campaign ribbons perfectly aligned, Combat Action Badge, Bronze Star, Navy Cross for the Syria operation that Thornton had tried to bury. And what do you think, Lieutenant? Chen straightened. I think you're the best officer I've ever served under. I think if Admiral Thornton has a problem with you, it says more about him than it does about you. He paused. But I also think he's a flag officer with enormous power, and you're a lieutenant with a target on your back. Accurate assessment. So what do we do? Kira met his eyes. We execute the mission. We maintain discipline, and we let truth handle the rest. And if truth doesn't show up, then we make it show up. Chen nodded slowly. Something like determination settled into his features. I've got your back, ma'am, whatever happens. I know you do, Lieutenant. That's why you're wearing that body camera. Chen blinked, touched the small device attached to his uniform, standard equipment for ceremonial documentation. You think something's going to happen? I think it's better to have a record than wish you had one. 07:45 hours. The ceremony begins. 1,000 Marines and Navy personnel stood in perfect formation. The color guard took position, 8 warriors carrying flags that represented everything they'd sworn to defend. Kira joined them, rifle at port arms, spine straight, eyes forward. The guest of honor arrived in a black sedan. Command Sergeant Major William Hayes, 94 years old, moved with the careful deliberation of a man whose body remembered wars his mind sometimes forgot. His Medal of Honor rested against his chest, that pale blue ribbon and bronze star representing the absolute pinnacle of American military valor. Omaha Beach, 1944. He'd stormed through machine gun fire, dragged 3 wounded soldiers to safety, and held a position alone for 4 hours until reinforcements arrived. Kira felt something tighten in her chest. This should be sacred, pure. A moment outside politics and personal grudges. At 00:0800 hours precisely, Rear Admiral Marcus Thornton stepped onto the parade ground. He wore his dress white summer uniform, gold braid on the shoulders, rows of ribbons dominated by the distinctive red, white, and blue of the Navy Cross. 61 years old, but he moved with the rigid intensity of someone who had kept himself sharp through sheer force of will. His eyes scanned the assembled troops with predatory focus. Those eyes found Kira. Held. Something cold and satisfied flickered across his face. The ceremony began. National anthem, invocation, speeches about duty and sacrifice, and the unbroken chain connecting today's warriors to the heroes of the past. Sergeant Major Hayes sat on the stage, looking small and fragile, and somehow immortal. Then Thornton took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, active duty personnel, veterans, honored guests." His voice carried across the silent field. "Today we celebrate the extraordinary valor of Command Sergeant Major William Hayes, but we also remind ourselves that the standards he exemplified must be maintained." Kira's pulse spiked. She kept her face blank, her rifle steady. Excellence in combat requires more than physical presence. It requires truth, integrity, the absolute certainty that those who wear this uniform have earned their place through genuine accomplishment. Thornton paused dramatically. Not inflated records, not political correctness, not diversity quotas designed to weaken our fighting force. The words landed like grenades in the assembled formation. Recently, stories have surfaced about questionable combat achievements, claims of extraordinary performance that strain credibility, records that upon closer examination appear fabricated to advance certain agendas. He stepped down from the stage, began walking along the ranks, inspecting, judging, moving with calculated deliberation toward the color guard, toward Kira. We owe it to heroes like Sergeant Major Hayes to maintain absolute standards. No compromises, no exceptions. His voice sharpened. No stolen valor masquerading as legitimate service. He stopped directly in front of her. 1,000 pairs of eyes watched. Cameras recorded. The world held its breath. Thornton's voice dropped to something just above a whisper, meant only for her. "Your father died screaming in Yemen, a SEAL who couldn't even save himself, just like my son died because women like you insisted on playing soldier." The words hit like rounds to the chest. Kira kept her eyes forward, face expressionless, breathing controlled. Stay calm. "That Syria operation you're so proud of," Thornton continued, his breath hot against her ear. 7 rooms, 12 hostiles. I know what really happened. You froze. Your teammates did the work. You just took the credit. His voice turned venomous. "And I'm recommending a formal investigation into your entire service record. By the time I'm done, you'll be lucky to avoid prison for stolen valor." His hand moved. Open palm. The slap cracked across Kira's face like a rifle shot. The parade ground went silent. Time fractured. Kira staggered half a step. Her cheek burned. Her vision blurred. The rifle nearly slipped from her grip. Somewhere in the shocked silence, someone gasped. Cameras kept recording. 1,000 witnesses stood frozen, not believing what they'd just seen. A flag officer striking a subordinate in front of the world. Thornton straightened his uniform, satisfied. "You're dismissed, Lieutenant. Return to your quarters. You're relieved of—" He raised his hand again, fist clenched, clear intent to strike a second time. And something inside Kira Vance, something compressed and controlled for 10 years since a 14-year-old girl had watched 2 officers deliver a folded flag, finally broke free. Not rage, not emotion, just cold, absolute clarity. Stay calm, think clear, strike true. She moved. The rifle dropped to the ground. Her left hand intercepted Thornton's incoming fist, redirected the force past her shoulder. Her right hand came up fast, precise muscle memory from 6 years of combat training and delivered a single controlled strike to his jaw. The impact was clean. Mathematical. Perfect. Rear Admiral Marcus Thornton's eyes rolled back. His knees buckled. He collapsed onto the ceremonial grass dress whites against green unconscious before he hit the ground. His hat rolled free, tumbling across the parade ground in the sudden silence. Kira stood over him. Her chest rose once with a deep breath. Settled. Her hands moved automatically to clasp behind her back, parade rest position, the instinctive default of a warrior under stress. She looked at the stage, at Sergeant Major Hayes. The 94-year-old Medal of Honor recipient watched her with eyes that had seen Omaha Beach and understood something about the difference between orders and honor. She looked at Lieutenant Chen, whose face showed shock and fear and something that might have been pride. She looked at the 1,000 men and women who had just witnessed history fracture in real time. And she spoke. Clearly, calmly, her voice carrying across the field with the same precision she'd used to clear 7 rooms in Syria. I will accept the consequences. No one moved. No one spoke. The first person to break the silence was a Navy corpsman pushing through the ranks with his medical bag already open. He dropped to one knee beside Thornton's unconscious form. Pulse check, airway clear. He's breathing. I need a stretcher. 2 more corpsmen materialized. They rolled Thornton onto a litter, secured his neck, lifted him as one unit. Kira watched them carry him away. Her hand throbbed. Her cheek burned. But deeper than physical pain was something harder to name. Not regret, not fear. A kind of free-fall sensation, like stepping off a cliff and not knowing if there was ground below. A commander pushed through the crowd. 2 master-at-arms followed hands near their sidearms. Lieutenant Vance, you are hereby ordered to stand down and accompany these petty officers to the base JAG office for immediate questioning. Kira didn't resist, didn't argue. Yes, sir. Your credentials. She pulled her military ID from her breast pocket, handed it over with steady fingers. The commander took it, like he was handling evidence at a crime scene. You are advised that anything you say from this moment forward may be used in court-martial proceedings. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Do you wish to invoke your right to remain silent? Kira met his eyes. No, sir. I will cooperate fully with the investigation. The MAAs moved to flank her. Not touching, not restraining, just present. The crowd parted as they walked. 1,000 faces staring in stunned silence. Some showed shock. Others showed something harder to define. Not quite approval, but not condemnation either. Recognition, maybe. The acknowledgement that they'd just witnessed something that would be whispered about for the next 20 years. Kira kept her eyes forward, her spine straight, her breathing controlled. The parade ground fell away behind her. The ceremony interrupted, shattered, dissolved into chaos she could hear but not see. Officers shouting, families confused, press cameras swiveling to follow her retreating form. The walk to the JAG building took 4 minutes. 4 minutes during which Kira's mind played the last 60 seconds on repeat. The slap. The raised fist. The muscle memory that had moved faster than thought. Had she had a choice? Yes. She could have stood there and taken the second blow. Endured it. Filed a complaint later through proper channels. Played the system. Survived. But her father's voice echoed in her skull. There's a difference between patience and cowardice, Kira. Patience is waiting for the right moment. Cowardice is refusing to act when the moment arrives. The right moment had arrived. She'd acted. Now came the consequences. The interrogation room was small and sterile. White walls, metal table, 3 chairs, camera in the corner, red light blinking steadily. The MAAs deposited her inside, closed the door, locked it from outside, with a heavy mechanical click. Kira sat in one of the chairs, placed her hands flat on the table, and waited. Time became elastic, meaningless. She focused on her breathing. 4 counts in, hold, 4 counts out. The same rhythm she used before clearing a hostile building. The same discipline that had kept her alive through 3 combat deployments. The door opened. A woman entered. Late 40s. Commander's eagles on her collar. JAG insignia on her lapel. She carried a leather folder and moved with the precision of someone who'd spent decades navigating military bureaucracy. Her name tape read Santos, the card Sergeant Major Kellerman had given her. Santos sat down across from Kira, opened the folder, studied its contents for a long moment. Lieutenant Vance, I'm Commander Elena Santos, Base Staff Judge Advocate. I'm here to advise you of your rights and conduct a preliminary inquiry. She pulled out a recorder. This interview is being recorded. Do you consent? Yes, ma'am. State your name, rank, and service number. Lieutenant Kira Vance, United States Navy, service number 7829461. Santos leaned back. Her eyes were sharp, evaluating. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to counsel. You have the right to terminate this interview at any time. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Do you wish to invoke any of these rights? No, ma'am. Edie Santos made a note. Then let's start with a simple question. Did you strike Rear Admiral Marcus Thornton? Yes, ma'am. Describe the circumstances. Kira kept her voice level. Factual. Empty of emotion. She recounted everything Thornton's speech about stolen valor, his approach to the color guard, the whispered accusations about her father, the slap, the moment of decision when his fist rose for a second strike. I had 3 options, she said quietly. I could stand there and take another hit. I could retreat and abandon my post. Or I could defend myself with minimum necessary force. She met Santos's eyes. I chose defense, 1 strike, controlled, then immediate surrender to authority. Santos studied her for a long moment. Lieutenant Vance, you're facing potential charges under Article 128, assault on a superior commissioned officer. Maximum penalty includes dismissal from service, forfeiture of all pay and allowances, and confinement. How long? 10 years. The number hung in the air. 10 years. For defending herself. For refusing to be a victim. For 1 moment of controlled violence that lasted maybe 3 seconds. That's maximum penalty, Santos continued. Unlikely given the circumstances, but I need you to understand the severity of what you're facing. I understand, ma'am. Good. Santos closed her folder. Because what you don't understand yet is that this situation is far more complicated than a simple assault charge. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. Admiral Thornton has been under investigation by NCIS for 14 months. Financial irregularities, contractor relationships, equipment failures that have resulted in American casualties. Santos paused. Your report from Afghanistan 18 months ago. It wasn't buried. It was the first crack in his wall. We've been building a case ever since. Kira's pulse quickened. What are you saying, ma'am? I'm saying cooperate fully. Tell the truth. Don't embellish, but don't minimize. Santos stood. And trust that this investigation will be thorough. Very thorough. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. For what it's worth, Lieutenant, I knew your father. Served with him briefly in the Gulf. What you did on that parade ground. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. Master Chief Vance would have been proud. The door closed. Kira sat alone in the silence. Her hand throbbed, her cheek burned, her future hung by a thread. But somewhere deep in her chest, something else stirred. Not fear, not regret. Hope. Because maybe, just maybe, the truth was finally going to matter. She pulled out the scrap of paper Kellerman had given her. Santos's number. Already in the room with her. No coincidence. No accident. Something bigger was happening. Something that went beyond a slap on a parade ground and a single punch that had shattered the silence of 10 years. Kira folded her hands on the table and waited. The mission wasn't over. It was just beginning. The door opened 47 minutes later. Kira had counted every second. Not because she was anxious, but because counting gave her mind something to do besides replay the sound of her fist connecting with Thornton's jaw. 2 people entered. A Navy commander with intelligence insignia on his uniform. A civilian woman in a dark suit carrying a tablet. Neither smiled. Neither offered pleasantries. The commander spoke first. Lieutenant Vance, I'm Commander David Webb, Naval Criminal Investigative Service. This is Special Agent Andrea Castellano. Kira straightened in her chair. NCIS. This wasn't just a JAG inquiry anymore. Agent Castellano sat down across from her, set the tablet on the table, and fixed Kira with eyes that had probably seen every variation of human deception the military could produce. Lieutenant, we're going to show you something. After you watch it, we're going to have a very long conversation. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Castellano turned the tablet toward Kira and pressed play. Body camera footage. High definition. Crystal clear. The timestamp showed it was recorded less than 2 hours ago. The parade ground from Lieutenant Chen's perspective. Thornton approaching the color guard. His speech about stolen valor. His approach to Kira's position. Then the audio captured what 1,000 witnesses couldn't hear. Thornton's whispered voice, barely audible, but clear enough to transcribe, "Your father died screaming in Yemen. A SEAL who couldn't even save himself. Just like my son died because women like you insisted on playing soldier." The slap, the crack of palm on cheek. Kira's controlled reaction, a half step back, then straightening, holding formation. No retaliation. Perfect discipline. Then Thornton's voice again, louder now. "You're dismissed, Lieutenant. You're relieved of—" His hand rising, fist clenched, clear intent to strike a second time. Kira's defensive movement, the intercepted fist, the controlled counterstrike, Thornton dropping. Kira immediately stepping back, hands behind her back. "I will accept the consequences." The video ended. Silence filled the room. Castellano leaned forward. This footage definitively establishes 2 attempted assaults by Admiral Thornton. It establishes that you did not initiate violence. It establishes that your response was controlled and proportionate. Kira's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. "So the charges are still proceeding. Striking a flag officer requires formal review regardless of circumstances." Castellano paused. "But that's not why we're here at—" She checked her watch, 13:47 hours. Webb pulled out his own tablet, queued up a different file. Audio only. Timestamp showed it was recorded approximately 8 months ago. Location: Forward Operating Base Lightning, Afghanistan. Voices emerged from the speaker. One she recognized immediately as Thornton's. The others were unfamiliar, but clearly civilian. "We need confirmation on the contract extension. Our board is getting nervous about the timeline." Thornton's voice, weary and irritated. "I've already told you. The body armor contract will be approved. My signature carries weight. but I expect compensation for expediting this through channels. Of course, Admiral. The payment structure we discussed remains in place. 7.3 million across 4 accounts. Make it 8, and I want guarantees that if any issues arise with the equipment, my name stays out of it. Understood. Our company takes full responsibility for product performance. A bitter laugh from Thornton. Product performance. That's what you call armor that fails ballistics testing. 23 service members have died wearing your defective vests in the last 14 months. I read the after-action reports. Market conditions require certain cost compromises, Admiral. Our shareholders, I don't care about your shareholders. Just make sure my deposit's clear on schedule. The recording ended. Kira felt like she'd been punched in the gut. He knew. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. He knew the armor was killing people, and he approved the contract anyway. Worse, Castellano said, her voice crisp and cold. We've identified 23 casualties directly linked to equipment failures from Aegis Defense Corporation. 23 Americans who died because the body armor they trusted couldn't stop a bullet. Webb took over. We've been building this case for 14 months. Financial records communication intercepts contractor testimony. Your report from Afghanistan 18 months ago was the first indication that Thornton was dirty. His retaliation against you, that's now understood as an attempt to silence a whistleblower. Kira's mind raced. Everything she'd endured, the stripped command, the blocked deployments, the ceremonial exile, it wasn't just petty revenge. It was covering up murder. Those 23 casualties, she said slowly. Do their families know? Castellano and Webb exchanged glances. Not yet. We're working with casualty assistants to prepare notifications. This is going to destroy families, Lieutenant. Reopen wounds. Some of those service members died in operations you were part of. The weight of that settled over Kira like a physical force. Faces flashed through her memory. Petty Officer Williams from her second deployment killed by a sniper round that penetrated his vest. Gunner's mate Rodriguez dead after an ambush outside Kandahar. Young warriors who'd trusted their equipment, trusted their leaders, and died because of corruption. Then we owe them the truth, Kira said. All of it, no matter what it costs. Agreed. Castellano pulled out a digital recorder. Let's start from the beginning. Tell me everything you remember about Admiral Thornton's activities in Afghanistan. They talked for 4 hours. Kira recounted every detail, the late-night meetings, the contractors she'd seen entering and leaving Thornton's command tent, the envelope that had changed hands, the sudden shift in Thornton's attitude after she'd filed her report, the transfer orders that came through with suspicious speed. Castellano recorded everything, asked clarifying questions, cross-referenced details with evidence she'd already compiled. By the time they finished, it was past 1800 hours. Kira felt hollowed out, exhausted, in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. Webb stood and gathered his materials. You'll be confined to bachelor officer quarters, pending completion of the Article 32 hearing. No communication with anyone outside the legal process without clearance. No social media. No press statements. Understood. One more thing. Webb's voice softened fractionally. Admiral Thornton is being arrested tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. Formal charges under UCMJ Articles 92 and 133, plus multiple federal statutes. This becomes public in approximately 14 hours. Kira nodded slowly. And my court-martial proceeds separately. The law doesn't care about Thornton's crimes when evaluating your actions. But politically, practically. Webb allowed himself a thin smile. A decorated admiral who struck a subordinate officer while under investigation for corruption that killed 23 Americans. The narrative shifts dramatically. The escort took her to a small BOQ room. Bed desk chair window with blinds drawn. They left her uniform, but took her phone, her laptop, anything that could connect to the outside world. The door locked from outside. Kira sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time in 10 years, she cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears that tracked down her face and dropped onto her folded hands. She cried for her father, who died believing his daughter would have a better military than the one he'd served. She cried for the 23 families who would learn their children had died because of greed. She cried because she was tired and scared and alone in a way that combat had never made her feel. Then she wiped her eyes, straightened her spine, and began planning. Whatever came next, she would face it the way Master Chief Daniel Vance had taught her. With discipline, with honor, with absolute refusal to surrender ground that mattered. The night passed slowly. Kira didn't sleep. She ran through the incident 1,000 times, examining every angle, every decision point. By dawn, she'd reached a conclusion. She wouldn't change anything. Given the same circumstances, she'd make the same choice. That certainty brought a kind of peace. Fragile, but real. At 0630 hours, a key turned in the lock. Major Garrett Thorne entered. Maybe 45, graying at the temples, the kind of lean build that came from running every morning, regardless of weather. He carried a briefcase and moved with the controlled intensity of someone who didn't waste energy on unnecessary motion. "Lieutenant Vance?" He extended his hand. His grip was firm, brief, professional. "Major Garrett Thorne JAG Course. I've been assigned as your defense counsel. It's already proceeding to court-martial. Preliminary Article 32 hearing scheduled for 72 hours from now. Formal charges will be announced later today." He sat down, opened his briefcase, pulled out a folder thick with documents. "I've reviewed the initial reports. The situation is serious. You're facing potential charges under Article 128 assault on a superior commissioned officer. Commander Santos mentioned maximum penalty is 10 years. That's correct. Dismissal from service, forfeiture of all pay and allowances, and confinement." Thorne met her eyes. "But maximum penalty is unlikely given what I've seen. I need you to tell me everything. No editing, no protecting anyone. The truth, start to finish." Kira told him. From the beginning, her father's death, her career, Afghanistan, the contractor meetings, Thornton's retaliation, the ceremony, the slap, the knockout. Thorne listened without interruption, taking notes in shorthand, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When she finished, he set down his pen. "Here's what we're dealing with. The prosecution will argue that regardless of Thornton's initial assault, your response was disproportionate. A 24-year-old SEAL striking a 61-year-old admiral. They'll paint you as a hot-headed warrior who lost control." He paused. "And our defense, self-defense. Article 128 allows for defensive force to prevent imminent bodily harm. Thornton struck me once, then raised his hand to strike again. I responded with minimum necessary force." Thorne nodded slowly. "The problem is proving immediate threat. A good prosecutor will argue that an older admiral doesn't pose legitimate threat to a combat veteran. He outranks me by 5 grades. He has institutional power I don't possess. Physical capability isn't the only form of threat. True, but not legally relevant under Article 128. We need to focus on the physical assault and immediate danger." Thorne flipped through his notes. "What we have in our favor is witnesses, 1,000 of them, and cameras. If the footage shows what you say, it shows we have a case." Lieutenant Chen's body camera captured everything, audio and visual. Thorne's eyebrows rose. "You knew about the camera." "I suggested he wear it." "You anticipated something would happen." "Sergeant Major Kellerman warned me Thornton was planning something. I wanted a record." Something that might have been admiration flickered across Thorne's face. That was smart thinking, Lieutenant. Very smart. A knock at the door interrupted them. An MA stuck his head in. Sir, ma'am, the arrest is happening. It's all over the news. Thorne pulled out his tablet, opened a news app. The headline screamed across the screen, Decorated Admiral arrested on corruption charges. The video showed Thornton being led out of Bethesda Naval Hospital in handcuffs. 4 NCIS agents, 2 Navy JAG officers. Cameras everywhere, flashes popping like small explosions. This changes things, Thorne said quietly. Yesterday you were a violent subordinate who assaulted a superior officer. Today, you're the woman who stood up to a corrupt admiral who got 23 Americans killed. Public opinion doesn't determine military justice. No, but it creates pressure. Political pressure. The kind that makes generals nervous and politicians pay attention. He closed the tablet. I've already received over 100 offers of character witness testimony. Marines and SEALs you've served with. Officers who've observed your leadership. Even Sergeant Major Hayes, the Medal of Honor recipient from the ceremony, submitted a written statement supporting you. Kira's breath caught. Sergeant Major Hayes doesn't know me. He knows what he saw. Thorne pulled out a printed page. He wrote, and I quote, I stormed Omaha Beach with men who understood that rank without honor is tyranny. Lieutenant Vance defended her dignity the way any soldier should, with controlled force and immediate accountability. If that's a crime, then we've lost our way as a nation. Kira felt something crack inside her chest. Not breaking. Opening. She'd spent the last 36 hours believing she was alone in this fight. She wasn't. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we prepare. The Article 32 hearing is in 72 hours. You'll testify. I'll present evidence. Witnesses will be called. Thorne gathered his materials. It's not a trial, just an investigation to determine if charges are warranted, but it's crucial. This is where we make our case. Over the next 2 days, Kira prepared with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Thorne walked her through potential questions, aggressive tactics the prosecutor might use, ways to maintain composure under pressure. He was thorough, demanding, and absolutely professional. Witnesses came to give depositions. Chief Petty Officer Morrison, the Bud S instructor, who'd trained her, testified about her discipline, her judgment, her absolute control under pressure. In 28 years, Morrison said, I've never seen a more disciplined candidate, man or woman. She doesn't lose control. She calculates. Lieutenant Chen provided his body camera footage officially along with his own testimony about what he'd witnessed. She didn't initiate anything, Chen said firmly. She stood there, took the first hit, didn't react. Only when he raised his fist for a second strike did she respond. And even then, one hit, controlled. Then immediate surrender. That's not assault. That's textbook self-defense. Sergeant Major Kellerman flew in from San Diego to give a statement. I served with her father, Kellerman told the deposition recorder. Daniel Vance was the finest SEAL I ever knew. His daughter carries that same fire. What she did on that parade ground wasn't about anger or revenge. It was about refusing to be a victim. About standing up when every instinct screams to stand down. The night before the hearing, Kira sat alone in her BOQ room with her father's dog tags. She'd asked Thorne to retrieve them from her quarters, along with a small photograph, the only one she carried on deployment. The photo showed Master Chief Daniel Vance in desert utilities, squinting against Iraqi sun rifle slung over his shoulder. He looked both young and ancient at once, wearing the 1,000-yard stare that came from too many missions, too many losses, too much weight on shoulders that refused to break. I don't know how this ends, Dad, she whispered to the empty room. But I know I did what you taught me. I stayed calm. I thought clear. I struck true. She pressed the photograph to her chest over her heart, where her father's memory lived. Whatever happens tomorrow, I kept my promise. The dog tags clinked softly in her other hand. Metal against metal. The sound of a legacy passed down through blood. At 0800 hours the next morning, Kira walked into the Article 32 hearing. The conference room had been converted into a makeshift courtroom. Tables faced each other. A raised desk at the front for the investigating officer. Chairs along the walls packed with observers, Marines in uniform, civilian lawyers, a handful of media representatives who'd been granted access. Every eye tracked her as she entered and took her seat beside Major Thorne. The investigating officer was Colonel Marcus Ashford, late 50s, combat infantry background, reputation for being scrupulously fair and impossible to intimidate. This Article 32 hearing is convened to investigate charges against Lieutenant Kira Vance under Article 128 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, assault on a superior commissioned officer. His voice carried the weight of judgment. Lieutenant Vance, you have been advised of your rights. Do you understand the nature of these proceedings? Kira stood. Her voice didn't waver. Yes, sir. Major Thorne, you represent the accused. Yes, sir. Commander Walsh, you represent the government. The prosecutor stood. Mid-40s, JAG career officer. The tight expression of someone who knew his case was weak, but had to proceed anyway. Yes, sir. Then let's begin. Ashford's gaze swept the room. Commander Walsh, present your case. Walsh laid out the government's position with clinical efficiency. Lieutenant Vance struck Admiral Thornton, rendered him unconscious. Regardless of provocation, the action constituted assault on a superior officer. The physical disparity between a trained combatant and a 61-year-old admiral made the force used excessive. Court-martial was warranted. It was competent, legally sound, and completely hollow. Thorne stood. Sir, the defense does not dispute that Lieutenant Vance struck Admiral Thornton. What we dispute is the characterization of that action as assault rather than lawful self-defense. He clicked a remote. The monitor flickered to life. Lieutenant Chen's body camera footage played. Every detail in high definition. Thornton's approach, the verbal assault, the whispered accusation about her father. The first slap, the crack of impact making several observers wince. Kira's controlled reaction, no retaliation. Perfect discipline. Then the crucial moment, Thornton raising his fist, clear intent, undeniable threat. Kira's defensive movement, intercepted strike, controlled counter. Thornton dropping. I will accept the consequences. The video ended. The room was silent. Thorne let it hang for a moment, then spoke. This footage documents 2 attempted assaults by a superior officer against a subordinate. It documents restraint and discipline from Lieutenant Vance. It documents a textbook example of proportionate defensive force. Colonel Ashford leaned forward. Commander Walsh, response. Walsh stood clearly uncomfortable. Sir, while the video does show Admiral Thornton initiating contact, the question remains whether Lieutenant Vance faced genuine threat requiring physical response. A 61-year-old officer, regardless of his actions, poses limited physical danger to a combat-trained SEAL. She could have absorbed the second strike, Walsh continued. Reported the assault through proper channels. Instead, she could have let him hit her again. Thorne's voice cut through like a blade. That's what the government is arguing, that Lieutenant Vance should have stood there and allowed continued assault because her attacker held superior rank, that regulations somehow obligate victims to endure violence from their superiors. He turned to Ashford. Sir, with respect, that's not justice. That's institutional endorsement of abuse. Ashford's expression revealed nothing. I want to hear from Lieutenant Vance directly. Lieutenant, take the witness chair. Kira stood, crossed to the chair beside Ashford's desk, raised her right hand for the oath. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. Be seated. Ashford studied her. Lieutenant Vance, in your own words, describe what happened during the Medal of Honor ceremony. Kira recounted the events, not the sanitized version, the real one, Thornton's approach, the accusations about stolen valor, the whispered attack on her father's memory, the slap, the moment of decision when his fist rose for a second strike. I had 3 options, sir. Her voice was quiet, but absolute. I could stand there and take the hit. I could retreat and abandon my post. Or I could defend myself with minimum necessary force. She met Ashford's eyes. I chose defense. 1 strike, controlled. Then immediate surrender to authority. I didn't pursue additional violence. I didn't retaliate beyond what was required to stop the immediate threat. You're a trained combatant, Ashford said. You knew 1 strike would be sufficient to incapacitate Admiral Thornton. Yes, sir. That's why I used only 1 strike. If I'd wanted to cause serious injury, I had the training and opportunity to do so. I chose the minimum force that would end the threat. Walsh stood. Lieutenant Vance, isn't it true that you filed a complaint against Admiral Thornton 2 years ago, that you had a pre-existing conflict with him? 18 months ago, sir. I witnessed what I believe to be inappropriate conduct with defense contractors. I reported it through proper channels. And Admiral Thornton subsequently transferred you and ended your combat deployments. Yes, sir. So, you had motivation for revenge. Kira met Walsh's eyes directly. Sir, if I wanted revenge, I would have taken it 18 months ago, or last week, or any of 1,000 opportunities in between. Her voice hardened. I didn't strike Admiral Thornton because of our history. I struck him because he was attacking me and showed clear intent to continue attacking me. My motivation was survival, not vengeance. Walsh pressed. But you must have felt satisfaction, vindication, finally getting back at the man who ruined your career. No, sir. No. Admiral Thornton was a hero once. He earned his Navy Cross through genuine courage. Watching him fall literally and metaphorically brought me no joy. Kira paused. It just made me sad for what he'd become. The answer deflated Walsh's momentum. He tried a few more questions, but they lacked conviction. Ashford dismissed Kira back to her seat. I want to hear from additional witnesses, starting with Chief Petty Officer James Morrison. Morrison took the stand. 22 years as a Bud S instructor, the man who'd trained Kira through Hell Week. Chief Morrison, in your professional assessment, describe Lieutenant Vance's capabilities. Morrison didn't hesitate. She's the finest SEAL I've trained in my career, sir. Her technical skills are exceptional, but more importantly, her judgment under pressure is extraordinary. I've spent my entire career teaching warriors when to shoot and when not to shoot. The same principles apply to hand-to-hand combat. He leaned forward slightly. Lieutenant Vance showed textbook judgment on that parade ground. She absorbed 1 strike without retaliation. She only responded when the threat continued, and she used precisely the amount of force required. No more. That's not assault, sir. That's perfect discipline under extreme duress. The testimony landed hard. Ashford called more witnesses. Each one built on the last. A picture emerged, not of a hot-headed warrior who lost control, but of a disciplined professional who made a calculated decision in an impossible moment. Then Commander Santos took the stand and dropped the bomb. Sir, I'm required to inform this hearing that Admiral Thornton is currently under arrest on separate charges including conspiracy to defraud the government acceptance of bribes and violations of Article 92. These charges stem from a 14-month NCIS investigation into defense contractor corruption. The room erupted in murmurs. Santos continued. Lieutenant Vance's initial report 18 months ago was the first indication of these activities. Her subsequent retaliation by Admiral Thornton is now understood as an attempt to silence a whistleblower. Walsh shot to his feet. Sir Admiral Thornton's other legal troubles are irrelevant to the question of whether Lieutenant Vance committed assault. They're relevant to his credibility, Thorne countered. They're relevant to his motivation for attacking Lieutenant Vance. They're relevant to establishing a pattern of retaliation and abuse of power. Ashford raised his hand. Both counsel make valid points. I'll note the information for my recommendation. He checked his notes. I have one final witness, Sergeant Major Raymond Kellerman. Please take the stand. Kellerman walked forward with the steady gait of a man who'd survived 30 years of special operations. He settled into the witness chair with the calm of someone who'd testified before. Sergeant Major, state your relationship to Lieutenant Vance. I served with her father in Iraq, sir, Master Chief Daniel Vance. He saved my life in Fallujah when I was pinned down and taking fire. After his death, I became an unofficial mentor to his daughter. And what's your assessment of her character? Kellerman's voice went rough. Daniel Vance was the finest SEAL I ever knew. His daughter carries that same fire. What she did on that parade ground wasn't about anger. It wasn't about revenge. He paused. It was about refusing to be a victim. About standing up when every instinct screams to stand down. About honoring the memory of a father who taught her that courage isn't about fearlessness. It's about doing what's right when everything screams to run. He turned, looked directly at Kira. Daniel would be proud of what she did. So am I. Silence filled the room. Ashford reviewed his notes for a long moment. I've heard sufficient testimony. This hearing is concluded. I will submit my recommendation to the convening authority within 72 hours. He met Kira's eyes. Lieutenant Vance, you are remanded to your current confinement status pending that decision. The gavel fell. The room emptied slowly. Kira sat with Thorne, processing. How do you think it went? Better than I hoped. Thorne gathered his materials. Ashford is fair. He'll look at the evidence objectively. My guess, and it's only a guess, is he'll recommend against court-martial. And if he doesn't... Thorne met her eyes. Then we fight. And we keep fighting until justice is done. The MAAs escorted her back to the BOQ. Kira spent the rest of the day in limbo. Not quite free, not quite condemned, just waiting while others decided her fate. That night, lying in the narrow bed, she thought about the 23 Americans who died in defective body armor, about Thornton's corruption, about the weight of truth and the cost of speaking it. She'd started this journey at 14 years old, watching 2 officers deliver a folded flag. 10 years later, she'd kept the promise she'd made that night, whatever the price. The 72 hours crawled like years. Kira paced her small room until she knew every crack in the floor, every imperfection in the walls. She did push-ups until her arms burned, sit-ups until her core screamed, anything to keep her mind from spiraling into the darkness of uncertainty. On the second night, a knock came at 2200 hours. The MA opened the door. You have a visitor, ma'am, cleared through JAG. Kira expected Thorne, or maybe Kellerman. She didn't expect her mother. Catherine Vance stood in the doorway, looking exactly as Kira remembered, silver hair pulled back, tight posture, military straight, despite never having served eyes that had seen too much grief and refused to break under its weight. Mom. The word came out rough. How did you... I called every admiral I ever met at your father's memorial service, reminded them who Daniel Vance was, what he gave. Catherine stepped inside, and the door closed behind her. They owed me a visit with my daughter. Kira felt her throat tighten. You shouldn't have come. The press is everywhere. If they see you, let them see me." Catherine crossed the room and took Kira's face in her hands. "Let them see the mother of the woman who did what her father would have done. What every warrior with honor should do when faced with corruption and abuse." "Mom, I might go to prison." "You won't. You don't know that." "I know my daughter." Catherine's voice hardened with absolute certainty. "I know what Daniel taught you, and I know that the military your father died for is not the military that would punish you for defending yourself against a criminal." Kira's eyes burned. 10 years of holding back tears, of being strong, of never showing weakness. All of it crumbled in her mother's presence. "I was so scared, Mom. Standing there after I hit him, 1,000 people watching. I thought I'd destroyed everything Dad worked for. Everything I worked for." "You honored everything he worked for." Catherine pulled her close. "Your father called me the night before Yemen. Did you know that—" Kira shook her head against her mother's shoulder. "He said, 'Catherine, if something happens to me, don't let Kira become bitter. Don't let her become hard. Let her become strong. There's a difference.'" I asked him what the difference was. Catherine's voice cracked. "He said hard people break. Strong people bend and come back. Kira has to learn to bend." "I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm barely holding on." "That's what strong feels like, sweetheart. If it felt easy, it wouldn't be strength." They held each other in silence, mother and daughter, bound by grief and love and the ghost of a man who had shaped them both. Catherine pulled back, wiped her eyes, and straightened her spine. "Now, tell me about this Admiral Thornton. Tell me everything that man did to you." Kira told her. All of it. Afghanistan, the contractors, the report, the retaliation, the ceremony, the slap, the knockout. Catherine listened without interruption. When Kira finished, her mother's face had turned to stone. 23 dead because of defective equipment, he approved. Yes. And he called your father's death meaningless, said Daniel died screaming. Yes. Catherine Vance smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Then I hope you broke his jaw." "Mom, I'm not sorry. Daniel saved 47 lives during his career. He died saving 4 hostages and protecting his team. That man has no right to speak his name." Catherine smoothed her jacket. "I have to go before the press realizes I'm here. But I want you to know something. What, win or lose charges or no charges, you made the right choice. You stood up. You fought back. You refused to be a victim." Catherine's eyes glistened. "That's all your father ever wanted for you, and that's all I've ever wanted." She kissed Kira's forehead and walked out. The door closed. Kira sat on the edge of her bed, her mother's words echoing in her mind. Hard people break. Strong people bend and come back. She'd been bending for 10 years. Through Bud S., through combat, through Thornton's retaliation, through this. She would not break now. The verdict came on the 3rd day. Major Thorne arrived at 0900 hours. His expression told everything before he spoke, but Kira needed to hear the words. Colonel Ashford submitted his recommendation this morning. He found clear evidence of self-defense and determined that court-martial was not warranted. Thorne's professional composure cracked into a genuine smile. "All charges dropped. You're cleared, Lieutenant." The words hit like a physical wave. "Cleared," Kira repeated. "Just like that." Not just like that. The evidence was overwhelming. The body camera footage, the witness testimony, Thornton's arrest, and the corruption revelations. Ashford's recommendation was unanimous with the convening authority. Thorne pulled a document from his briefcase. This is your official exoneration. Your service record will reflect the incident, but also the finding of justified self-defense. Kira took the paper, read it 3 times. The words blurred and sharpened and blurred again. What happens to Thornton? He's facing court-martial on 12 counts, conspiracy to defraud the government, acceptance of bribes, dereliction of duty resulting in death. If convicted on all charges, he's looking at 40 years minimum. Thorne paused. The 23 families are being notified today. NCIS is coordinating with casualty assistance. 23 families. 23 phone calls that would shatter lives and demand answers. Will they know my name? The families. Some already do. The media's been covering your case extensively. You've become something of a symbol. Thorne pulled out his tablet, showed her a news headline. Navy SEAL, who struck corrupt admiral, cleared of all charges. Below it, another headline. Whistleblower vindicated Vance report, led to Thornton investigation. Public opinion has swung heavily in your favor. There's a petition with over 200,000 signatures calling for you to receive a commendation. Thorne shook his head slightly. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've never seen anything like this. Kira set down the tablet. I didn't do this for public opinion. I know. That's why the public opinion is so strong. A knock at the door. The MA stuck his head in. Ma'am, there's a crowd outside the building. Press and, well, a lot of people in uniform. Kira looked at Thorne. You've been confined for 5 days, he said. Word got out that the verdict was coming today. Apparently people wanted to be here. They walked to the building entrance together. Kira pushed through the doors and stopped. Hundreds of people filled the space outside. Marines in uniform, Navy personnel, veterans in VFW caps and American Legion jackets, families with children on their shoulders. And at the front, standing in perfect formation, 50 members of the Naval Special Warfare community, SEALs, her brothers and sisters, the men and women who understood what it meant to go into dark places and do hard things. Silence fell as she appeared. Then someone started clapping. A single sound in the quiet. Then another. Then dozens. Then hundreds. The applause built like a wave crashing over her, carrying the weight of recognition she never expected and wasn't sure she deserved. Chief Morrison pushed through the crowd, the BUDS instructor who'd trained her through Hell Week. He stopped 3 feet away and came to attention. Lieutenant Vance. Chief Morrison. On behalf of Naval Special Warfare Group 1. His voice carried across the crowd. We want you to know that what you did on that parade ground represents the best of who we are. Courage under fire, discipline under pressure, honor when it costs. He rendered a salute. Sharp. Perfect. The kind of salute reserved for warriors who had earned it. Behind him, 50 SEALs did the same. Kira returned the salute, her hand trembling slightly. I was just doing what my father taught me. Ma'am, with respect, Master Chief Vance taught you well, and we're proud to serve alongside you. The salutes dropped. The crowd cheered. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks. Kira felt overwhelmed, exposed. Too much attention after days of isolation. Kellerman appeared at her elbow. Come on, let's get you out of here before you have to do any interviews. And he guided her through the crowd to a waiting vehicle. They climbed in, the doors closed, and suddenly the noise fell away. Breathe, Kellerman said. It's over. Is it? The hearing is over. Your career is intact. Thornton is going to prison. He studied her. What's bothering you? Kira stared out the window as the base rolled past. 23 people died because of equipment he approved. I filed that report 18 months ago. If someone had listened, then... Don't! Kellerman's voice sharpened. Don't play that game. You did everything right. You reported through proper channels. You documented what you saw. The fact that the system failed isn't on you. It feels like it is. That's survivor's guilt. Every combat veteran knows it. You can't save everyone, Kira. You can only do what's in front of you. My father saved everyone. That convoy in Iraq. The hostages in Yemen. He always found a way. Your father died in Yemen. Kellerman's voice went quiet. He saved 4 hostages, but he didn't save himself. He made a choice. The same choice you made on that parade ground to act knowing the consequences because not acting was worse. Kira turned to look at him. Daniel would tell you the same thing I'm telling you now. You can't carry the weight of what other people failed to do. You can only carry your own actions. And your actions were honorable. They drove in silence for several minutes. Where are we going? Kira finally asked. Quantico. You've been reassigned. Reassigned where? Kellerman smiled. You'll see. The vehicle pulled up to the Naval Special Warfare Training Compound. Familiar ground. The place where she'd learned to shoot to fight, to become the warrior her father had dreamed she'd be. A commander met them at the entrance. Female, mid-40s. The trident on her chest gleamed in the afternoon light. Lieutenant Vance, I'm Commander Sarah Mitchell, commanding officer of SEAL Team Training Division. And she extended her hand. Welcome to your new assignment. Kira shook her hand, confused. I don't understand. I was on ceremonial duty. You were. That assignment has been terminated. Mitchell's eyes gleamed with something that might have been approval. Effective immediately, you're being assigned as lead instructor for advanced close quarters combat. Your job is to train the next generation of SEALs in the skills that saved your life in Syria and on that parade ground. Lead instructor. The position comes with a promotion recommendation. The paperwork is already processing. Mitchell handed her a folder. Lieutenant Commander Kira Vance, assuming you accept. Kira opened the folder. The promotion order was real. Official letterhead. Proper signatures. Effective immediately. I don't know what to say. Say yes. The teams need instructors who understand that combat isn't just about fighting. It's about judgment, discipline, knowing when to act and when to hold back. Mitchell paused. Your students will learn from someone who's lived those principles. That's worth more than any classroom lecture. Kira looked at Kellerman. He shrugged. Don't look at me. This wasn't my doing. Then whose? Does it matter? It didn't. What mattered was the opportunity in front of her, the chance to do what her father had done for her, pass on the wisdom that had saved her life. I accept. Mitchell nodded, satisfied. Good. You start tomorrow. We have a new class of candidates who need to learn what real discipline looks like. The compound buzzed with activity. Young warriors training, pushing their limits, learning the fundamentals that would keep them alive in the darkest places on Earth. Kira watched them for a long moment. Your father trained some of these instructors, Kellerman said quietly. Did you know that? No. He was lead CQB instructor here for 3 years before his final deployment. Some of his techniques are still in the curriculum. Kellerman put a hand on her shoulder. Now his daughter is going to continue his work. I think Daniel would call that justice. That evening, Kira was given quarters on base. Nothing fancy. A small room with a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out over the training grounds. She unpacked the few possessions she'd retrieved from her previous assignment. Uniforms, toiletries, her father's dog tags, and a letter. The envelope was unmarked. Someone had slipped it under her door while she was out. She opened it. Lieutenant Vance. I don't know if you remember me. My name is Marcus Hayes. My grandfather was Command Sergeant Major William Hayes, the Medal of Honor recipient from the ceremony. My grandfather asked me to write to you. He's 94 years old, and his hands shake too much to hold a pen, but his mind is still sharp. He told me exactly what to say. He said, "Tell that young woman I've been watching warriors my whole life. Omaha Beach, Korea, Vietnam. I know courage when I see it. What she did on that parade ground, standing her ground, defending herself, then immediately surrendering to authority, that's the kind of courage that wins wars and builds nations." He said, "Tell her the admiral who hit her was a disgrace to the uniform. Tell her that men like him are why good soldiers die. And tell her that what she did was right. Not just legal, not just justified. Right." He also said, "Tell her she reminds me of a kid I knew on Omaha Beach, 19 years old, scared out of his mind. But when the ramp dropped and the bullets started flying, he didn't freeze. He moved. He fought. He survived." My grandfather paused when he told me this part. Then he said, "That kid was me, and I lived because I did what she did. I acted when everything screamed at me to stay down." My grandfather will be 95 next month. He's lived longer than most of his brothers from D-Day. He said he wanted you to know that courage doesn't get easier with age. It gets harder, but it also gets more precious. Thank you for reminding him what it looks like. With respect, Marcus Hayes, on behalf of CSM William Hayes, USA Retired, Kira, read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and tucked it into the wooden box with her father's dog tags. 2 warriors. 2 generations. 2 moments of courage separated by 80 years. The same choice. The same honor. She sat at the desk, pulled out a piece of paper, and began to write. "Dear Sergeant Major Hayes, your words mean more than I can express. My father taught me that courage isn't about fearlessness. It's about doing what's right when everything screams to run. I think about Omaha Beach sometimes, about what it must have taken to run into machine gun fire with nothing but a rifle and faith. I've been in combat. I've faced enemies who wanted me dead, but I've never faced anything like what you faced that day. You say I remind you of who you were at 19. I'm honored by that comparison, but I think the truth is simpler. We're all connected. Every warrior who ever chose to act instead of freeze, every soldier who ever stood up when the easier path was to stay down. My father used to say, 'The mission continues.' He meant that our work is never finished, that every generation passes the torch to the next. You passed your torch on Omaha Beach. My father passed his in Yemen. Now I'll pass mine to the young warriors I'm going to train. The mission continues. With deepest respect and gratitude, Lieutenant Commander Kira Vance, USN." She sealed the letter, addressed it, and set it aside to mail in the morning. Then she lay back on her bed and stared at the ceiling. Cleared, promoted, reassigned to a position where she could make a real difference. It felt surreal. 24 hours ago, she'd been facing 10 years in prison. Now she was being celebrated as a hero. But she didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired, relieved, grateful, and ready for whatever came next. The knock came at 2300 hours, late for visitors. Kira tensed, reached for the sidearm she wasn't carrying. "Lieutenant Commander Vance," a voice through the door. "Female. Professional. NCIS. We need to speak with you urgently." Kira opened the door. Agent Castellano stood in the hallway, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Behind her, Commander Webb wore an expression that made Kira's stomach drop. "What happened? May we come in?" They entered, closed the door. The tension in the room was suffocating. "An hour ago," Castellano said, "Admiral Thornton attempted suicide in his cell." Kira's breath caught. Attempted. He's alive. Barely. They found him in time. Castellano paused. But before he tried, he left a confession. 27 pages. Names, dates, financial records, everything. That's good, isn't it? For the prosecution. It's good for the prosecution. It's complicated for you. Webb pulled a tablet from his jacket, handed it to Kira. Page 14. Read it. Kira scrolled to the page, read the words. Her blood turned to ice. The confession detailed bribes, yes. Equipment failures. Cover-ups. But it also contained something else. A list of people Thornton claimed had helped him, and on that list was a name Kira recognized. Rear Admiral Thomas Merrick, her father's commanding officer in Yemen. I don't understand, Kira said slowly. Admiral Merrick approved my father's mission. He was at the memorial. According to Thornton's confession, Castellano interrupted, Admiral Merrick was aware of the faulty equipment issue 18 months before your father's deployment. He received reports. He buried them. The body armor Daniel Vance wore in Yemen was from the same defective batch that killed those 23 service members. The room spun. You're saying my father died because of defective equipment? We're saying it's possible. We won't know for certain until we examine the evidence. But if Thornton's confession is accurate, then my father's death wasn't just enemy action. Kira's voice came out hollow. It was murder. Webb and Castellano exchanged glances. We wanted you to hear this from us first, Webb said, before it becomes public, before the media gets hold of it. Because if this is true, Castellano finished, then you didn't just expose one corrupt admiral, you exposed a network, and some of those people are still in positions of power. Kira sat down heavily on the edge of her bed. Her father's face flashed through her mind, his smile, his voice, the 3 words he'd left her. Stay calm, think clear, strike true. He'd died wearing body armor that was designed to fail. He'd died because men in offices decided that profit mattered more than lives. What do you need from me? Kira asked quietly. Your testimony, your father's records, anything that might help us build the case against Merrick and anyone else involved. Castellano's voice softened. I know this is a lot to process. We can give you time. No. Kira stood. Her eyes were dry. Her voice was steel. I've waited 10 years for answers about my father's death. I won't wait another day. She met Castellano's eyes. Tell me what you need. I'll give you everything. The mission continued, but now it was personal. The next 72 hours blurred into a storm of documents, interviews, and revelations that shattered everything Kira thought she knew about her father's death. NCIS set up a secure conference room at Quantico. Boxes of files lined the walls. Computer screens displayed financial records, communication intercepts, equipment manifests. A decade of corruption laid bare under fluorescent lights. Kira sat across from Agent Castellano, a stack of photographs spread between them. These are the after-action reports from Yemen, Castellano said. Your father's final mission. We need you to look at them. I've read the official report, multiple times. This isn't the official report. Castellano slid a folder across the table. This is the classified version. The one that was sealed by Admiral Merrick immediately after the operation. Kira's hands trembled as she opened the folder. The first page was a standard mission brief. Operation Sandstorm. Hostage rescue. 4 American contractors held by insurgents in a compound outside Sana'a. High risk. Time sensitive. The second page was different. Equipment allocation. Body armor. night vision, communications gear. Each item had a serial number. Each serial number traced back to a specific manufacturer, Aegis Defense Corporation. The same company that paid Thornton, Kira said quietly. The same company. The same defective equipment. Castellano pointed to a line item. Your father was issued Aegis-manufactured body armor 12 hours before the mission. According to internal Aegis documents, we've obtained that specific batch failed ballistics testing 3 months earlier. The company knew. Merrick knew. They issued it anyway. Kira stared at the page. The words blurred. Her father's face swam in her vision. The official report said he was killed by enemy fire during the extraction, multiple gunshot wounds to the torso. That's technically true, but what the official report doesn't mention is that his body armor failed catastrophically. Rounds that should have been stopped penetrated through. Castellano's voice softened. Your father took 6 hits during the operation. His vest stopped 2. The other 4 went through like the armor wasn't there. 6 hits. 4 penetrations. Kira had imagined her father's death 1,000 times. The heroic last stand, the selfless sacrifice, the warrior's end. She'd never imagined him dying because the equipment he trusted had betrayed him. You're telling me my father was murdered. I'm telling you that powerful people made decisions that resulted in his death. Whether that meets the legal definition of murder is for the courts to decide. Castellano leaned forward. But morally, ethically, yes. Your father was killed by men who valued profit over his life. Kira closed the folder. Her hands had stopped trembling. Something colder had replaced the shock. What do you need from me? Everything you remember about Admiral Merrick. Every interaction. Every comment. Anything that might suggest he knew about the equipment issues before Yemen. I was 14 when my father died. Merrick was a distant figure. A name on a letterhead. But you met him, didn't you? At the memorial. Kira's memory flickered. Arlington. The burial. Hundreds of uniforms. Flags snapping in the wind. And Merrick, standing apart from the crowd, watching. He came to the graveside service, stood in the back, didn't say anything to my mother or me. Nothing at all. He left before the reception. I remember thinking it was strange. All the other officers stayed, shook hands, offered condolences. Merrick just disappeared. Castellano made a note. Guilt, maybe, or fear of saying something incriminating. Or he just didn't care. That's possible too. Castellano pulled out another file. There's something else you need to see. This is Admiral Merrick's current position. Kira opened the file, read the first line. Her blood went cold. He's on the Senate Armed Services Committee, senior military advisor. He retired from the Navy 2 years ago and immediately took a consulting position with the committee. He has direct influence over military appropriations equipment contracts and oversight investigations. He's been covering his tracks for 10 years. Every investigation that got close to the truth was quietly shut down. Every whistleblower was transferred or discredited. Every piece of evidence was classified or destroyed. Castellano's jaw tightened. Until now. What changed? You changed. Your report from Afghanistan was the first one that didn't go through Merrick's network. It went directly to NCIS through a channel he didn't control. That's what started our investigation. That's what brought down Thornton. And that's what's going to bring down Merrick. Kira stared at the photograph of Merrick attached to the file. Distinguished, silver-haired, the kind of face that inspired confidence and trust, the face of the man who had let her father die. How do we get him? Thornton's confession names him directly, but a confession from a man who just attempted suicide isn't enough. We need corroborating evidence, financial records, communications, witness testimony. Who else knew? Castellano hesitated. That's the complicated part. According to Thornton, there are at least 6 other officers involved. Some still active duty. Some retired into private sector positions with defense contractors. She paused. One of them is currently commanding Naval Special Warfare Command. Kira felt like she'd been punched. Who? Vice Admiral Richard Holt. The name hit like a bullet. Vice Admiral Holt had presented Kira with her trident when she graduated from Bud S. He'd shaken her hand, told her that her father would be proud, smiled for the photographs that hung in her mother's living room. Holt trained with my father. They were swim buddies at Bud S. He was at my graduation. He signed the equipment authorization that sent defective gear to Yemen. His signature is on the manifest. Kira couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, too hot, the walls closing in. I need a minute. She pushed back from the table, walked out of the conference room, kept walking until she found an empty hallway, leaned against the wall, forced air into her lungs. Holt, Merrick, Thornton. 3 names. 3 men she'd trusted. 3 men who had killed her father as surely as if they'd pulled the trigger themselves. Footsteps approached. Kellerman appeared at the end of the hallway. Heard you left the briefing early. I needed air. Kellerman stopped beside her, leaned against the opposite wall. What did they tell you? That my father's body armor was defective. That Merrick and Holt knew. That they signed off on it anyway. Kellerman's face didn't change. No surprise. No shock. You knew, Kira said quietly. You already knew. I suspected. For years. Kellerman's voice was heavy. After Daniel died, things didn't add up. The equipment reports were sealed too fast. The investigation was closed too quickly. I asked questions, got told to stop asking. He paused. So I stopped asking out loud, but I never stopped looking. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what, that I had suspicions but no proof, that I thought your father was murdered but couldn't do anything about it. Kellerman shook his head. You were 14, Kira. Then you were in training. Then you were deployed. There was never a right time. There's a right time now. Yes, there is. Kellerman straightened. So what are you going to do about it? Kira pushed off the wall. Her eyes were dry. Her voice was steel. I'm going to help them take down every single person responsible, starting with Merrick. Even if it destroys careers, even if it exposes things the Navy would rather keep buried, my father died because men cared more about their careers than his life. I won't make the same choice. Kellerman studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Good. Because I have something you're going to need. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a USB drive. What is this? Insurance. I've been collecting evidence for 8 years. Communications, financial transfers, meeting records. Not enough to prosecute on its own, but combined with what NCIS has. He pressed the drive into her hand. It's everything I know about Merrick, Holt, and the others. I was saving it for the right moment. Why now? Because you're the one who's going to finish this. Not me. Not NCIS. You. Kellerman's voice roughened. Daniel saved my life. Now his daughter is going to get him justice. That's how it should be. Kira closed her fist around the drive. Thank you, Sergeant Major. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when Merrick is in handcuffs. She returned to the conference room with the drive, handed it to Castellano without explanation. What's this? Evidence. 8 years' worth. Sergeant Major Kellerman has been building a case since my father's death. Castellano plugged the drive into a secure terminal. Files cascaded across the screen. Hundreds of documents. Emails. Bank statements. Photographs. This is incredible, Castellano breathed. This connects Merrick to Aegis going back to 2012, before your father's deployment, before Thornton was even involved. Merrick started this, Kira said. Thornton was just a recruit. It looks that way. Castellano scrolled through the files. There's enough here to open a formal investigation. Grand jury level. But we're going to need testimony. Live witnesses who can corroborate the documentary evidence. Who do you have? Thornton, if he survives and cooperates. Several mid-level Aegis executives who've already flipped. And Castellano hesitated. And one other person who was there when the decisions were made. Someone who was in the room when Merrick and Holt authorized the equipment shipments. Who? Castellano pulled up a photograph on the screen. Kira's heart stopped. The face staring back at her was familiar. Older now. More weathered. But unmistakable. Chief Petty Officer James Morrison, her BUDS instructor. The man who had trained her, pushed her, tested her, told her that her father would be proud. Morrison was Merrick's aide during the Yemen operation, Castellano said. He handled logistics, equipment manifests, supply chain coordination. If anyone knew about the defective gear, it was him. Morrison trained me. He told me my father saved his life in Fallujah. That's true. It's also true that he was present when Merrick signed off on the body armor shipment. His initials are on the authorization. Kira felt sick. Are you saying Morrison is part of this? I'm saying Morrison knows things he's never told anyone, whether he was complicit or just following orders. Castellano shrugged. That's what we need to find out. Where is he now? Still at Coronado, still instructing BUDS candidates. We've reached out. He's agreed to meet with you. Me? Why me? Because you're the only person he'll talk to. He refused NCIS interviews, refused legal counsel. But when we mentioned your name, Castellano paused. He said he'd been waiting for this conversation for 10 years. The flight to San Diego took 4 hours. Kira spent every minute staring out the window, replaying every interaction she'd ever had with Morrison. Hell Week. The moment he'd stood over her and asked if she was there because she wanted to be a SEAL, or because she was trying to die like her daddy. The graduation ceremony. His handshake. His words, "Your father would be proud." The letter of recommendation he'd written for her first deployment. The advice he'd given before Syria. Had any of it been real, or had he spent 6 years looking at the daughter of a man he'd helped kill? The car dropped her at a small house near the beach. Morrison was waiting on the porch. Older than she remembered. Grayer, smaller somehow, as if the years had compressed him. He stood as she approached. "Lieutenant Commander Vance, thank you for coming. You said you'd been waiting for this conversation." "I have." Morrison gestured to a chair beside him. "Please, sit." Kira remained standing. "I'll stand." "Fair enough." Morrison sat back down slowly like a man whose bones ached with every movement. "I suppose you want to know about Yemen." "I want to know the truth." "The truth?" Morrison laughed bitterly. "I've been running from the truth for 10 years. Do you know what that does to a man carrying something that heavy that long? I know what it does to a daughter who lost her father." The words landed hard. Morrison flinched. "I deserved that. You deserve worse. If what they're saying is true, it's true." Morrison's voice cracked. "All of it. The defective equipment, the authorization, Merrick and Holt and the others. I was there. I saw everything." Sakira's hands clenched into fists. "Then why didn't you stop it?" "Because I was a coward. Because I told myself it was just one shipment, just one operation, and the odds of equipment failure were low. Because Merrick was an admiral, and I was a chief, and when he told me to initial the manifest, I initialed the manifest." "And 23 people died, including my father. Including your father." Morrison's eyes glistened. I've thought about Daniel every day for 10 years. Every morning I wake up. Every night I try to sleep. His face is there, asking me why, asking me how I could let this happen. So answer him. Answer me. How could you? Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Your father saved my life in Fallujah. That's true. He pulled me out of a burning vehicle when my legs were trapped and insurgents were closing in. He carried me half a mile to the extraction point while taking fire. I owed him everything. And you repaid him by signing the paperwork that killed him. Yes. The word came out broken. That's exactly what I did, and I've hated myself for it every day since. Kira wanted to hit him, wanted to scream, wanted to watch him suffer the way her father had suffered. But she didn't. Because Morrison wasn't the enemy. Morrison was a witness, and witnesses were more valuable than vengeance. You're going to testify, Kira said. Against Merrick, against Holt, against all of them. I know. You're going to tell the truth about what happened. Every detail. No matter who it destroys. I know. Morrison looked up at her. That's why I wanted to see you first. Before the lawyers and the investigators and the media, I needed you to know that I'm sorry. That sorry doesn't begin to cover it, but it's all I have. Sorry doesn't bring my father back. No, it doesn't. Nothing can. Morrison stood slowly. But maybe the truth can give him some justice. And maybe that's worth something. Kira stared at him for a long moment. The man who had trained her. The man who had betrayed her father. The man who was now offering to burn down his entire career to make things right. Testify, she said finally. Tell the truth. Help us bring down Merrick and Holt. And maybe, she paused, maybe someday I'll be able to forgive you. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, because you haven't earned it yet. She turned and walked back to the waiting car. Didn't look back. Couldn't look back. Because if she did, she might see her father's ghost standing beside Morrison. And she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The investigation accelerated. Morrison's testimony combined with Kellerman's evidence and Thornton's confession created an airtight case. Within 2 weeks, arrest warrants were issued for Admiral Merrick, Vice Admiral Holt, and 4 other officers. Kira watched the arrests on television from her quarters at Quantico. Merrick was taken into custody at his home in Georgetown. Cameras captured him being led out in handcuffs, his distinguished face pale with shock. He'd thought he was untouchable. He'd been wrong. Holt's arrest was more dramatic. He was apprehended at Naval Special Warfare Command headquarters in the middle of a briefing. Dozens of SEALs watched as federal agents escorted their commander out in handcuffs. Some of them had served under Kira's father. Some of them had worn the same defective equipment that had killed him. None of them looked away. The media called it the biggest military corruption scandal in 50 years. 23 deaths directly attributed to defective equipment. Millions of dollars in bribes. A conspiracy that reached from defense contractors to the highest levels of naval command. And at the center of it all, a single thread that connected everything. The report filed 18 months ago by Lieutenant Kira Vance, the woman who refused to stay silent. 3 weeks after the arrests, Kira received a summons to Arlington National Cemetery. She went alone. The cemetery was quiet in the early morning light. Row after row of white headstones stretched toward the horizon. The weight of sacrifice pressed down like a physical force. She found her father's grave without difficulty. She'd been here hundreds of times. Could have walked the path blindfolded. But this time was different. This time she finally had the truth. "Hey, Dad." She knelt beside the headstone, placed her hand flat against the cold marble. "I know what happened now. I know about the equipment. I know about Merrick and Holt and all of them. I know you didn't die because of bad luck or enemy fire. You died because men you trusted betrayed you." Her voice cracked. She let it. "I got them, Dad. All of them. They're going to prison. They're going to lose everything. Their careers, their pensions, their reputations. They're going to spend the rest of their lives knowing that the world knows what they did." A breeze stirred the air. The flags near the tomb of the unknown soldier snapped softly in the wind. "I kept my promise, the one I made when I was 14. I finished what you started. I stood up. I fought back. I stayed calm, thought clear, and struck true." Tears streamed down her face. She didn't wipe them away. "I miss you, Dad. Every day. I became a SEAL because of you. I survived because of what you taught me. And I'm going to keep going, keep training, keep fighting, because that's what you would do." She pressed her forehead against the cold stone. "The mission continues. You taught me that, and I'll never forget." She stayed there for a long time, kneeling beside her father's grave, letting the grief and the anger and the love wash through her without resistance. When she finally stood, her face was wet, but her eyes were clear. "Goodbye, Dad. I'll see you again someday. See you again. But not yet. I've still got work to do." She touched the headstone one last time. Then she walked back toward the path, toward the world, toward the future her father had died to protect. Behind her, the morning sun broke through the clouds and painted the white headstones in gold. 6 months passed. The trials dominated national news for weeks. Admiral Merrick, Vice Admiral Holt, 4 other officers, 12 executives from Aegis Defense Corporation. All of them paraded before cameras, their lives dismantled in public courtrooms, their crimes exposed for the world to see. Kira testified 3 times. Each time she walked into the courtroom with her spine straight and her voice steady. Each time she looked the defendants in the eyes and told the truth about what she'd witnessed. Each time she refused to let their attorneys rattle her twist, her words, or make her doubt what she knew. The prosecutors called her their most effective witness. The defense called her a vindictive whistleblower with a personal grudge. The jury called her credible. Merrick was convicted on all counts, 42 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole. When the verdict was read, he collapsed in his chair. The man who had let 23 Americans die to protect his career couldn't even stand to face his sentence. Holt received 38 years. He'd been less directly involved in the financial corruption, but his signature on those equipment manifests had sealed his fate. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Morrison testified as a cooperating witness. His honesty earned him a reduced sentence, 5 years in minimum security, but the real punishment was visible on his face every day of the trial. The guilt he'd carried for a decade finally had an audience, and that audience judged him harshly. When it was over, when the last defendant had been led away in handcuffs, and the courtroom had emptied, Agent Castellano found Kira standing alone in the hallway. "It's done," Castellano said. "Is it? The legal part anyway. The convictions are solid. The appeals will fail. These men are going to die in prison." Castellano studied her. "But that's not what you're asking about, is it?" "My father is still dead. The 23 others are still dead. No verdict changes that." "No, it doesn't." Castellano was quiet for a moment. But maybe their families can sleep a little easier now. Maybe they can stop wondering why. Maybe they can finally grieve without the weight of unanswered questions. Kira thought about the families she'd met during the trial. Parents who'd lost children, spouses who'd lost partners, children who'd grown up without fathers or mothers, all of them carrying the same wound she carried. "It's something," she admitted. "It's not enough, but it's something. But it's... That's all justice ever is. Something, never everything." Castellano extended her hand. "For what it's worth, Lieutenant Commander, you did more to clean up the Navy than most people do in a lifetime. Your father would be proud." Kira shook her hand. "People keep telling me that. Maybe you should start believing them." The training compound at Quantico became Kira's new home. Every morning at 0500, she stood at the edge of the training yard and watched a new class of candidates arrive. Young men and women who wanted to become SEALs, who wanted to serve their country, who had no idea what that service would cost them. Her job was to prepare them, not just physically. Any instructor could run them until they dropped, push them until they broke-test their bodies against impossible standards. Kira did all of that, but she also taught them something harder: judgment, discipline. The difference between rage and controlled violence. The knowledge that the hardest enemy they'd ever face wasn't waiting in some foreign country. The hardest enemy lived inside their own heads. "Stay calm," she told them during their first drill. "Think clear. Strike true. Those 3 principles will keep you alive when everything else fails. Memorize them. Live them. Because someday in some dark corner of the world they'll be the only thing between you and a body bag." The candidates listened. Some of them already knew her story. The woman who'd knocked out an admiral. The whistleblower who'd brought down a corruption ring. The daughter of Master Chief Daniel Vance. But Kira never talked about that. Not in training. Not in the barracks. Not in the quiet moments between drills when candidates approached her with nervous questions and hero worship in their eyes. "I'm not here to tell you war stories," she said when they asked. "I'm here to make sure you survive long enough to have your own." 3 months into her assignment, a call came through on the secure line. Commander Mitchell, her commanding officer, met her in the operations center. "Syria," Mitchell said without preamble. "Counterterrorism operation. High-value target. The mission requires a small team with specialized skills. I'm an instructor now. You're a SEAL first, always." Mitchell handed her a folder. "Hostage rescue. 4 American contractors held by ISIS remnants. The regular teams are deployed on other operations. We need experienced leadership." Kira opened the folder. Read the brief. 4 hostages. 12 confirmed hostiles. A fortified compound in contested territory. Extraction window of 6 hours before the hostages would be moved to a location where rescue would be impossible. "When do we leave?" "Wheels up in 4 hours. You'll have a 6-person team, all volunteers who specifically requested to serve under you." "Who are they?" Mitchell smiled slightly. "You trained most of them, Steve." The team assembled on the tarmac as the sun set over Quantico. 6 faces Kira recognized. Candidates who'd survived her instruction earned their tridents and graduated into the fleet. Young warriors she'd pushed to their limits and watched rise to meet every challenge. Petty Officer 2nd Class, Elena Vasquez. 23 years old. Best pistol shooter in her class. Grew up in East Los Angeles. Joined the Navy to escape gang violence. Found a new family in the teams. Petty Officer 3rd Class Marcus Webb. 24. Son of a police officer killed in the line of duty. Understood sacrifice in his bones. Never quit. Never complained. never stopped moving forward. Petty Officer Second Class, James Okonkwo, 25, Nigerian immigrant, became a citizen at 18 and enlisted the same day. Believed in America with a ferocity that put native-born patriots to shame. Petty Officer Third Class, Sarah Chen, 22, youngest of the group. Daughter of Chinese dissidents who'd fled to America in the 1990s. Small and quiet until the shooting started. Then she became something else entirely. Petty Officer Second Class David Kowalski, 26, Polish heritage, Catholic faith. Prayed before every mission and fought like the devil himself afterward. Petty Officer Third Class, Michael Reyes, 23, Hispanic, Texas-born. Rode rodeo before joining the Navy. Said the bulls were scarier than any terrorist. They stood at attention as Kira approached. At ease. She looked at each of them in turn. You know the mission. 4 American lives in the balance. 12 hostiles minimum, probably more. We go in fast, we go in quiet, and we come out with everyone breathing. Questions. Vasquez raised her hand. Ma'am, is it true what they say about you, about the Syria operation before 7 rooms alone? Yes. How did you do it? Kira met her eyes. I stayed calm. I thought clear. I struck true. Same thing I taught you. Same thing I expect you to do tonight. Yes, ma'am. Good. Kira turned to the aircraft. Load up. We brief in the air. The flight took 11 hours. They crossed time zones and continents, leaving behind everything familiar and flying toward the unknown. Kira used the time to review the intelligence study, the compound layout, and run through contingency plans. She'd done this 100 times before. The routine was comforting in its familiarity. But something was different this time. These weren't strangers beside her. These were her students. Young warriors she'd trained, tested, and prepared for exactly this moment. If any of them died tonight, it would be on her. The weight of that responsibility pressed down like a physical force. Chen noticed her staring at the mission brief without reading it. Ma'am, are you okay? Fine, Chen. Just thinking. About what? Kira was quiet for a moment. My father went on a mission like this, 10 years ago. Hostage rescue. High-value compound. He saved the hostages but didn't make it out himself. Chen's face sobered. I know. Everyone knows. Then you know what's at stake tonight. Not just for the hostages. For all of us. Kira met her eyes. I won't let what happened to my father happen to any of you. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. We all can. Kira looked around the aircraft. 5 other faces nodded back at her. Vasquez, Webb, Okonkwo, Kowalski, Reyes. Trust. Faith. The willingness to follow her into the darkness because they believed she would lead them back out. Her father had led teams like this. He'd earned the same trust. And he'd kept that trust even when it cost him everything. All right, Kira said. Let's go over the plan one more time. They hit the ground at 2200 hours local time. The compound was smaller than the intelligence suggested. Good. Fewer places for hostiles to hide. Fewer opportunities for things to go wrong. Kira led the team through the outer perimeter in complete silence. Hand signals only. Every step calculated. Every breath controlled. They reached the main building without detection. Kira held up a fist. The team froze. Through her night vision, she counted sentries. 4 visible. Probably more inside. The hostages were being held in the northeast corner according to the intelligence. 2 guards on the door, another 2 on patrol. She signaled Vasquez and Webb to take the perimeter guards. Okonkwo and Kowalski would breach the main entrance. Chen and Reyes would cover the extraction route. She would go in first, just like her father had in Yemen. The thought flickered through her mind and vanished. No time for ghosts, not now. She counted down on her fingers. 3, 2, 1, move. The perimeter guards dropped silently. Vasquez and Webb were as good as she'd trained them to be. Clean shots, no alarms. Okonkwo and Kowalski breached the main door with controlled explosives. The crack echoed through the night, but by then Kira was already inside. First room. 2 hostiles, both down before they could raise their weapons. Second room. Empty. Third room. 3 hostiles. One managed to get off a shot before Kira put him down. The round went wide, punched through the wall somewhere behind her. "Commander, you okay?" Vasquez's voice in her earpiece. "Fine. Keep moving." Fourth room. The hostages. 4 American contractors bound and gagged, eyes wide with terror and hope. 2 guards standing over them, weapons raised. Kira didn't hesitate. 2 shots. 2 guards down. She crossed to the hostages, pulled out her knife, started cutting restraints. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Kira Vance, United States Navy. We're here to bring you home." One of the hostages, a man in his 40s with blood caked in his hair, started crying. "We thought no one was coming. We thought..." "We always come. That's the job." She helped him to his feet. "Can you walk?" Yes, I think so." "Then let's go. Stay close to me." The extraction route was clear. Chen and Reyes had done their jobs. The team converged on the exit point, hostages surrounded by SEALs moving fast, but controlled. They were 50 meters from the extraction vehicles when everything went wrong. Gunfire erupted from the north. A second group of hostiles that the intelligence had missed. 10, maybe 12 of them pouring fire into the team's position. Kowalski went down. "Man down!" Vasquez screamed. Kira's mind went cold. Crystal clear. The same clarity she'd felt on the parade ground. The same clarity her father had probably felt on that rooftop in Yemen. "Vasquez, Webb, suppressive fire. Okonkwo, get Kowalski, Chen, Reyes, get the hostages to the vehicles. Move, move, move." The team responded instantly. Training taking over. Muscle memory and discipline doing what panic couldn't. Kira grabbed her rifle and moved toward the incoming fire. "Ma'am, what are you doing?" "Buying you time. Go." She found cover behind a low wall and started picking off targets. 1 shot, 1 kill. Just like her father had taught her. Just like she'd taught her students. The hostiles fell. 1, 2, 3, 4. But more kept coming. "Commander, we need to go." Webb's voice crackled with urgency. "Get the hostages out. I'll catch up." "Ma'am, that's an order." She heard the vehicle start, heard the team loading the hostages, heard Kowalski groaning alive, thank God alive. 5 more hostiles down. 6, 7. The gunfire slowed, stopped. Kira waited, counted to 10. No more incoming. She moved. The vehicles were 100 meters away. She ran. Flat out, faster than she'd ever run in her life. Bullets kicked up dirt behind her. 1 hostile she'd missed. Maybe 2. A round punched through her vest. Body armor held, but the impact knocked the breath from her lungs. She kept running. 50 meters, 20, 10. Hands grabbed her, pulled her into the moving vehicle. Vasquez and Webb, their faces streaked with dirt and fear and relief. "Drive!" Kira gasped. "Drive!" The vehicle accelerated. The compound fell away behind them. They were clear. Kira lay on the floor of the vehicle, staring at the ceiling, chest heaving. "Everyone okay? Sound off?" "Vasquez good. Webb good. Okonkwo good. Chen good. Reyes good. Kowalski hit but stable. Round caught his vest. Gonna have a hell of a bruise." 6 SEALs, 4 hostages. All alive. Mission accomplished. Kira closed her eyes and laughed. The sound was raw and broken and absolutely genuine. "What's so funny, ma'am?" Vasquez asked. "Nothing. Everything." Kira sat up slowly, wincing at the pain in her chest where the round had hit her vest. "My father did this mission 10 years ago. Hostage rescue. Similar compound. He saved the hostages but didn't make it out." "But you did." "We did." Kira looked around at her team. "All of us. Because we stayed calm. We thought clear. We struck true. And we had each other's backs." Kowalski coughed from his position on the stretcher. "Ma'am, for the record, best training I ever had." Kira smiled. "For the record, Kowalski best team I ever led." The extraction aircraft met them at the predetermined coordinates. Medical personnel swarmed Kowalski and the hostages. The team stood together on the tarmac, exhausted and battered and alive. Kellerman was waiting. "Heard you had some excitement," he said. "Nothing we couldn't handle." "I didn't doubt it." Kellerman's eyes swept the team. "Your father would be proud. Of all of you." Kira looked at her SEALs. Young warriors who'd faced the worst and emerged stronger, who'd trusted her leadership and proven themselves worthy of the trident. "He would," she agreed. "And so am I." 2 weeks later, Kira stood before a formation of new candidates at Quantico. Fresh faces, eager eyes, no idea what they were in for. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. Her father's death, her training, Afghanistan, the parade ground, Thornton, Merrick, the trials, Syria. All of it had brought her here, to this compound, to these candidates, to the chance to pass on everything she'd learned. "Welcome to the first day of the rest of your lives," she said. "Some of you won't make it through the week. Some of you won't make it through the month. That's okay. Not everyone is meant to be a SEAL, but those of you who do make it, those of you who push through when every fiber of your being screams to quit, you'll become part of something bigger than yourselves." She paused. Let the words settle. "I'm going to teach you how to fight, how to shoot, how to survive in the worst conditions imaginable. But more importantly, I'm going to teach you when to fight, when to hold back, when to strike. Because the difference between a good warrior and a great one isn't strength or speed or even skill. It's judgment. It's knowing that every action has consequences. Every shot, every punch, every decision. She thought about the parade ground, about Thornton's raised fist, about the choice that had changed everything. My father taught me 3 principles that have guided my entire life. Stay calm, think clear, strike true. He died living those principles. I almost lost everything defending them, but I would make the same choice again, every time, because some things are worth fighting for, even when the cost is high. She looked at the candidates, saw herself in their faces, young, uncertain, full of potential that hadn't been tested yet. You're going to be tested here, every day, every hour, and you're going to fail. A lot. That's okay. Failure is how you learn. Failure is how you grow. The only way to truly fail is to quit. A hand went up. A hand. Young woman in the front row. Couldn't be more than 21. Ma'am, is it true what they say about what you did to that admiral? Kira smiled. It's true. Do you regret it? Not for a second. Kira straightened her spine. He hit me. He raised his hand to hit me again. I defended myself with the minimum force necessary, and then I accepted the consequences. That's what warriors do. We act when action is required. We take responsibility for our choices. We don't run from the outcome. What happened to him, the Admiral? He's in prison for corruption that killed 23 Americans, including my father. Kira's voice hardened. I didn't hit him for revenge. I didn't hit him because I was angry. I hit him because he was attacking me, and I refused to be a victim. There's a difference. The candidate nodded slowly. Something like understanding flickered in her eyes. Now, Kira said, enough questions. We have work to do. You have warriors to become. She led them to this training yard, watched them struggle through the first exercises, saw some of them falter, saw others push through. This was her mission now, not combat, not hostage rescue. Teaching, leading, passing on the flame that her father had passed to her. The mission continued. It always would. Because that's what warriors did. They fought. They fell. They got back up. And they kept going until the job was done. Kira thought about her father one last time. The man on the rooftop, the warrior who'd given everything so others could live. She understood now, not just his sacrifice, but his purpose. He hadn't died for glory or recognition. He'd died because some things mattered more than survival. Honor. Duty. The lives of people who couldn't defend themselves. She carried that purpose now, in her blood, in her bones, in every lesson she taught, and every candidate she trained. Master Chief Daniel Vance had started something in that building in Yemen. His daughter had finished it. And now she would pass it forward to a new generation of warriors who would carry it further still. The sun rose over Quantico. A new day, a new class, a new chance to make a difference. Lieutenant Commander Kira Vance stood at the edge of the training yard watching her students prepare for another day of brutal, transformative work. She touched the dog tags beneath her shirt. Her father's tags now worn alongside her own. 2 generations of service. 2 legacies intertwined. Stay calm, Dad, she whispered. Think clear. Strike true. The words carried on the morning breeze rising toward a sky that stretched endless and blue above a nation her father had died to protect. A nation she would spend her life defending. Admiral Thornton was serving 35 years in federal prison. Admiral Merrick was serving 42. Vice Admiral Holt was serving 38. The others were scattered across military and federal facilities. Their careers destroyed, their legacies, erased, their crimes finally exposed. 23 families had received official acknowledgement that their loved ones had died because of equipment failures caused by corruption. The acknowledgement couldn't bring anyone back, but it gave them something they'd been denied for years. The truth. Chief Morrison served his sentence quietly. He wrote to Kira once a letter she kept, but never answered. Forgiveness would come someday. Not yet, but someday. Sergeant Major Kellerman retired 6 months after the trials ended. He spent his days fishing off the coast of San Diego, finally at peace after 30 years of carrying secrets that weren't his to keep. Kira's mother remarried 3 years later. A retired Army colonel who understood what it meant to love someone who had given everything to their country. Catherine Vance finally found happiness after a decade of grief. And Kira trained SEALs, class after class, year after year, passing on the lessons her father had taught her, watching young warriors grow into something extraordinary, knowing that somewhere in some dark corner of the world, one of her students would face an impossible moment and make the right choice, because that was the mission. Not revenge, not glory, not recognition, just the simple, endless work of preparing good people to do hard things. The mission continued. It always would. Because warriors don't quit. Warriors don't surrender. Warriors stand their ground, defend the helpless, speak truth to power, and accept the consequences of their choices. That was what Master Chief Daniel Vance had taught his daughter on a rifle range in California when she was 8 years old. That was what Lieutenant Commander Kira Vance taught her students every day at Quantico. And that was what every SEAL who graduated under her command carried into battle for the rest of their lives. Stay calm. Think clear. Strike true. 3 words. 1 legacy. Eternal.